Welcome to Scene, where the art world meets the real world. Every 2 weeks, we sit down with emerging and established artists to offer a genuine glimpse into their lives and minds, all in an authentic and totally straightforward manner. I'm Carrie Scott, your host. And with 2 decades of experience as a curator and art historian, I firmly believe in the transformative power of art, if it's seen. Have you seen Lala Drona? Lala Drona is an artist whose works live in the kind of rupture between, I guess, what's physical and the virtual, the human and the machine. Born in Denver, Colorado, and currently based between London and Paris, Drona is a painter, performer, and writer pursuing her master's in painting at the Royal College of Art. Her practice is expansive, and talking to her made that really clear. Painting is kind of just the entry point. From performance to video to fiction, she constructs a world where mourning and rebirth collide. She's exploring the techno-spiritual bonds between humans and our devices. And these are big questions being kind of writ-bear in paint. And the paint's visceral, it's layered, it's haunting, it's really physical against these questions about what a post-digital world might look like. To say that our conversation was kind of mind-bending says too much, but it did make me think, because Drona's work doesn't offer easy answers. It asks, what are we in the middle of becoming? And what's left behind when we finally get there? Lala Drona, thank you so much for hopping on this afternoon. I'm so excited to speak to you. I really am. Because first off, I want to understand what expanded painting is.
Well, thank you for having me on here, Carrie. Expanded painting, I think, is defined as painting plus anything else. So it's like you start from the idea of painting and then you expand from there. It can be like maybe a painting that it's not a square, it's more of a triangle, or maybe it extends or it comes off the canvas. Maybe there's holes in the canvas like Lucio Fontana. But yeah, it's kind of just expanding.
So like breaking the picture plane, that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I saw it on your website and I was like, what does that actually mean? And then I was going to go read the blog because I know there's a blog about it. And then I was like, no, I'm just gonna ask her, which it's now obvious to me that is what it is. Because there's a whole conversation that you seem to be having between like the line between what's real and what's not real. And yet your painting is incredibly physical. From what I can see, it's like heavy and dense and textured, and it's like so clearly in our face. And yet you're having this giant conversation with it about virtual reality, virtual worlds, what reality is. How on earth did you end up here? And with that balancing act, like the balancing of this like hugely physical thing that you do, and then this kind of virtual imagined world.
Wow, I guess that's, where do I start with that one? I guess, but I would say at least right now, what I'm doing with my work is it's really inspired by this feeling of like the last scream of physicality, of like humanity's physicality as we go into a more digital or violent world. And so I put that type of energy into the paintings, and there's something about the physical world that, of course, I love, the sensations, the feelings of it. And I think that's why within my paintings, you can see traces of fingers. You can see that visceral quality. There's also thinking about the digital world and what modern beauty is today, and kind of subverting those ideas of modern beauty. So like looking at modern beauty today, we notice that modern beauty is defined by non-resistance. So anything smooth, and you'll see this with smooth paintings, or maybe a lot easier to digest. But I like that beauty with an edge. So I like that visceral quality to paintings, and it reminds me of the physical world. While that flat painting pulls me more into that digital world where there's a certain flattening, or we can think about even, let's say, like, is it Facetune? Like taking away the lines, or and into that digital world. There's a certain flatness and smoothness happening there.
There's an actress that I follow whose name is Jamel. I can't remember her last name. She's brilliant, and she's really vocal about the sort of standards of beauty that are placed upon women. She put up a thing yesterday, literally, about how Instagram was, or some people were posting Angelina Jolie and they were face tuning her face, but like her face is not even good enough for this world that we now live in. And I was looking at them and thinking exactly what you just said, that like, hang on, our notion of beauty is now so sanitized or universalized that we're actually like editing Angelina Jolie, who's clearly one of the most beautiful people on the planet. It just seems backwards to me. But I want to get back to something that you just said, which is you talked about the digital world and in the same breath said a more violent place.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah, I
what's that about?
do. I think who knows if it's actually more violent today than it was yesterday. Maybe we just know about more of it because of, social media and our ability to communicate. But I feel like violence can come in different forms. It's not just physical. I think it's evolved through the ages. And there's a different type of violence happening that might be a violence that is taking away one's reality, or maybe changing one's reality. And I think we can see that through, I guess it's easy to see that through deep fakes, or, this idea of what is reality, what is the distraction, what is it within politics as well. I think we get a lot of distractions today, and we don't really know what the truth is anymore. And yeah, there's this feeling of being stuck in this place where we don't know what the old story is, but we also don't know what the new story is. So we know we can't go back to the past, but we also don't know how to go forward into the future. And we're kind of stuck in this place right now.
And so why use painting to sort of tackle all of this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've asked myself that before, because I do use videos sometimes, but I have decided to commit to painting this year. I think that it's almost a protest, or a way of holding on to the physical world, holding on to something that makes us human, the beautiful parts of being human. And there's a tactile, a touch. There's a encounter that happens between our bodies and the world that I want us to continue having.
Well, and I think that's where painting does kind of interrupt. I mean, God, this is like a big philosophical question, but it interrupts our, right. When you're painting or you're making a work of art, that is the thing. Like that is the whole point of it, is that it was made in a moment, and it captures a moment, even if it's made over a year, right? That it has been physically brought from thought into being, right? And we seem to be sort of weirdly doing the reverse, where in our digital lives, right? Whether it's on Zoom right now, I'm talking to a bunch of pixels. I know you're there, but like we've taken matter and made it matterless.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a smarter way to say that. But so it does occur to me, right? Like when I was looking through your site, that you're making these, like, they look heavy. They look like kind of impossible not to engage with their physicalness. And I know I'm kind of beating a drum here on this, but that the paintings are so textural, whether it's someone screaming or it's a abstracted thing, that you're almost fighting with us to think about material.
Yeah. Yeah. exactly. And I do think that I there's something about painting that I want to make painting that you have a different experience when you see it in real life than you do online.
Mm.
I think, okay, it's great that we can show our work online. However, as we said before, it makes everything flat. Flat painting works great for that. Um, but it is really nice when I see a painting online and then I see it in real life and there's a difference. There's a surprise, there's a texture, something to discover. So I think that's also something I love to do. There's also just the use of the body itself within my process is really important. I start on the floor and I work with gravity and there's a certain tension and resistance that I'm actually fighting with. So maybe you can feel that.
Mm.
And then after that, I moved to the wall, and so there's like a different dance going on there.
Hmm. And start at the beginning.
Mhm.
How did you live in London? You sound like me.
Yeah.
And you're splitting your time, I think, between London and Paris. But how did you come to painting in the first place? And how did you end up in London? And what, tell us your story.
Yeah. So I was born in Colorado, in Denver, in the United States. My mom is a Venezuelan immigrant, and my dad is from New York. So I also speak Spanish. And yeah, so I grew up there, and I actually I've always been an artist. It was just something that was always there, and luckily my mom she supported me in that. But you know, I still had the both the parents telling me I needed to study something different, of course. But I think what really kind of was the genesis of my work as like a commitment or a compulsion in some way was so during puberty, like, so I was born with a congenital deformity, which results in only one breast growing during puberty. And so I had one breast that developed and the other one that didn't. And I kept that secret for a long time from everyone, from my family and everything. And so during that time, I used art as this sort of protective place that I could go to and kind of have freedom in some way and comfort. And eventually down the line, I had quite a few reconstructive surgeries. And I think that has also, in one way or another, influenced the viscerality or the visceral, the physical in my work itself. So there is, I think, with art, it started out as sort of a protection or an escape, but by now it's opening up into this place of freedom and transformation, I would say.
There, I mean, first of all, thank you
Mhm.
for sharing that part of your story. There's your work it's haunting. There's like a right, and I've sort of been touching on it by saying it's like really physical and you can't avoid it, but it is haunting. Um, and right, you scrape at things. It looks like you scrape at things. Um, and and knowing now your story, it that not the haunting part, but the like the kind of wanting your presence to be part of the making
Mhm.
makes more sense.
Yeah.
Um, do you want the work to feel that like angst?
The angst. Yeah, I mean, I was a punk rocker. I mean, growing up, or I mean, if you can call it that, because I was a little bit after the actual, real punk rockers. I was I guess, a ghost of the punk rockers. And there's always been a bit of angst. I think growing up as a teenager, a lot of times we go into angst. I especially had my angst because of my body and whatnot. And I think that I bring that with me into my work and it comes out in sometimes the line. I think there's a hidden art like a doodling or things that we don't really show people like doodling or maybe kind of manga-esque kind of drawings in our notebooks in high school or things like that. And I've decided to celebrate that. And so sometimes there might be some cartoonish figures, there might be the line itself that becomes more present. And yeah, I think there's something there that that I want to remember as well. That intensity is important to me.
I was going to ask you about the figures because at first they're like alarming. You know, I referenced one. I was like, one screaming at you. There's a canvas that this face kind of takes up the majority of the canvas, and then there's this open mouth that is. It feels like it's screaming at you. But then other figures, they feel like more friendly and sweet and less foreboding, I guess. Do you see the figures as characters, as part of like a narrative, or are they just, yeah, what are they for you?
Well, for me, I think in some of like I did a few paintings where I decided to start out with a dream or a figure from a dream.
Mm.
And I think that's where it started from. I know the Egyptians, they thought that you could commune with the dead in dreams, or you can kind of cross to the spirit world and things like that. And I thought that was interesting. So I decided to try to paint what I was dreaming. And then after that, just filling up the painting kind of unconsciously. And so those figures came from there. But strangely enough, they began to become more buried under material. I would scratch away the material in order to reveal them. But I think they were disappearing because I was going towards more abstraction, but more of a figurative abstraction.
Mm.
But yeah, for me, those characters, I do need to think about it a bit more because, yeah, I don't really know who they are, but they're not in the future, they're not in the past, they're not in a dream, but they're maybe some sort of parallel. I think they're us, that's for sure, in some way, but I'm not sure besides that.
I think I kind of love that you don't know because, right, I described them as feeling ambiguous. And so the fact that you're like, I don't know, they're just there. They're just there for me. They just exist feels like that's coming across in the work, that they're neither here nor there. Have you, how has it been sort of navigating the art world in the UK versus Colorado?
So I guess in Colorado, I wouldn't be able to represent because I left Colorado quite early. I left right after my studies and I went to Paris. So I didn't really immerse myself into the art world there. But I could talk about Paris versus here. Also, I've only been in England since last August, so about 7 months, I think, ish. And that's to go to the Royal College of Art. So that's mostly where I'm spending my time right now in the painting program. I would say so far, though, living in Paris and being in that art world versus being in London, I think that it might be the language thing, but it's a lot easier to speak to people and approach people here during the openings. Although French people, they are very nice and everything as well. But yeah, there's just a difference. I think besides that, I think Mayfair, just even the architectural kind of planning of that and everything being in the same place really makes a difference of what goes on a Thursday night or on an opening night. So I think the commercial art world here is very much bumping.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I came here from New York 15, 16 years ago.
Mhm.
Is that right? 15 years ago. And right, the New York art world is alive and well. But I think that there is something to be said for the architecture being more welcoming here. Like you can just spill into things off the street, and the way galleries are set up, while they still have that like high desk gallery feel, they're a bit more approachable than say your sort of Chelsea, New York space, or having to walk up 4 flights of stairs to get to the gallery that you're like, I'm not even sure if I'm allowed in. So I think it works. It also, I think because the galleries are all in shopping districts, for better or for worse now, especially in London, I think that there's a kind of more open, and you go, aspect to the way that the art world works in the UK, but I don't really know anymore because, like you, it was kind of a long time ago.
Yeah. And there is also in Paris though, like the thing I love about Paris though, there's the cultural part of the arts and that rich history, and just being there feels like such a big celebration of culture and art, and that kind of free thinking and creativity that I know someone, like, we could also argue that it's here in London as well, but it's different in Paris. It's undeniable, I think.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they're both class, like A+ cities for making art, seeing art.
Yeah.
Definitely not complaining about either, or New York for that matter. But
Yeah.
it's a funny sort of. It's interesting to think about the way the art world works in those places.
Mhm.
And what about the RA? How has that been? You're the first artist that I've interviewed in the Have You Seen series who is there studying. So I have to ask.
Yeah. So the RCA, it's quite it's an incredible experience. It's I think it's really interesting because they've taken, let's say, 150 artists or 150 painters, and we're all together in, two buildings that are right next to each other, so practically one building. And so if you think about it, just ask the question, what happens when you put 150 people who are, usually kind of people who identify with the margins or are neurodivergent in some way, or just different in our brains because we've chosen to do this thing, and the egos as well. And I think that it becomes such a beautiful place for kind of that cross-pollination of art. But it can also just be a wild, wild place. I really think somebody should make a reality TV show about it.
About the RCA specifically? Yeah.
Well, I think probably any art school, like during, at the RCA right now, the program is 1 year now. So I think it's very intense as well because it's been kind of shoved into that 1 year. So all of the energy, it's wild because we're all sensitive creatures as artists. So you walk into the building and you can feel the collective energy, and you can feel when it's stressed, you can feel when it's sad, you can feel when it's happy. And so it's just riding this roller coaster. And it could be too much for some people. It could be, but it can also, it's also an amazing, amazing experience.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely loved grad school, or my grad school experience, mostly because the way that the University of Washington was set up was that the MFA students had access to the MA students. So I was doing my art history thing, but I could audit all these MFA classes. And I did, because I was like, how can I possibly talk about contemporary art if I don't understand what the artists are going through and what they're being taught in terms of like practical stuff. Which was awesome, albeit hard because, as you say, right, it's a bunch of people who are super sensitive and tapped into things that some of us are nerd to or turned off to. And so while I'm sitting there trying to like analyze and critique and see things in a broader context, they're just busy making work because they like have to, which is the thing that artists do, right? Like it feels that this is true for you, and it comes across in the work that like you have to make this stuff, and that it comes from within you, and that like it would come out in another way if it wasn't in these paintings that are so visceral and haunting and textural. And do you think that's true, that like there would be another way?
I mean, yeah, I think there would have to be. I I hope. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I think for a lot of artists, it's something compulsive. Like you don't have a choice. It just comes out, and you choose the medium in which it comes out. And I think that it would come out in a different way, whether that be a healthy way or an unhealthy way as well. I think, at least for me, I think I would write So I love writing. I actually studied in my BA, I studied creative writing. And so maybe that's where some of these little characters come from every once in a while. But yeah, I think that it's something that we definitely don't choose. And you can see that through, I mean, just me being around 150 artists at all times and the amount of work that we put in from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, just with our paintings, is really an incredible sight to see.
It is, right. That's the other thing that people always forget. One, art is hard to make. Like you said, it's physical. You use gravity to begin with. But when I interviewed Leonardo Drew last year, he's broken from making these like huge physical works for the last 60 years. Like his knees are broken, his wrists are like, he's like an athlete, right? He's like Agassi, who talks endlessly about how he can't get out of bed in the morning without like stretching first. I think we forget how physically draining art making is, but also how dedicated artists end up being to their practices, right? As you said, that you're kind of living there for 8 hours every day, 8 hours plus, I'm guessing, making work to like help us process other things. It's extraordinary. What do you hope for the work? What do you want? Where do you want it to go? What do you hope for it?
Wow. I mean, what do I hope for? I hope that it will touch people. I think that, I guess I want the work to give people the courage to transform. And I want them to feel invited to look a little longer.
Mm.
I would like the work, of course, like the big dreams. I would love to see it in the museums one day. That would be amazing. The big ones. But those are the big dreams. And but yeah, I think I, more than anything, want to connect to people and help people not feel alone. I think that's always the best encounter with the work, is when someone can tell me that they saw my work and they didn't feel alone. I think that's one of the best compliments.
Okay, last question. Do you think your work is political?
Oh yeah, I mean, we can get into a lot of different layers of that, but yes, it is political. I think that art is political. I think living in a world that, doesn't necessarily push you in the way of being an artist because of course, capitalistic gains and values and all of that. Although I know that there is an art market and whatnot, but I mean, it doesn't start out that way for all of us. And so, yeah, I do think it's political, just making it. I do think being a woman, or let's say people who are historically urged to keep silent in a lot of ways, can be seen as political. I think that art, not only because of the identity politics, of course, but like just art in general is political in the way of just denying our collective reality and proposing something new.
Beautifully said. Denying our collective reality. I'm writing it down. What do you know when women were accepted into your program?
Oh no, do you?
No.
Okay, we're gonna look that up.
We're gonna look that up. It's just a good reminder when I'm often pressed by people to be like, oh my God, can you stop banging on and on about women artists? And I'm like, what? No, can't really, because it's like in the last 100 years that we've been able to express ourselves, and less than that we could have bank accounts in this country or mortgages, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no, not going to shut up about it, but it would be interesting to know, how recently women were allowed into your program. So we'll look that up after. Thank you so much for doing this. I've loved getting to know you. I've loved getting to know your work. I cannot wait to come and see it in person. Are you going to be doing a like the final presentation in the spring?
Yeah, there's one in the summer in June. There's like a public facing degree show.
Yeah.
And that is from June 19th to June 22nd, I believe.
Awesome.
So it's open to the public.
It's for anyone listening, it is an amazing way. Well, the studios open up. There are like exhibition spaces that are made as well. You get a crash course in proper contemporary art, like what is being made right now. And as Lala said, there's 100 and what did you say, 120?
Yeah, like around 150-ish.
Amazing, right? It's such a good thing. So that was, you said June 19th to the 22nd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. In London. Thank you. Keep us posted. If anyone wants to see your work, they can go to your website, which is, I think, just your name, right?
Yeah, it's laladrona.com, or my Instagram is Lala Drona Official.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. We didn't talk about enough. We'll have to do a studio visit and talk more. But
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Carrie. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Scene Podcast. If you liked what you heard, I'd love it if you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to connect with us between episodes, follow us on Instagram at WatchSceneArt. I'm Carrie Scott, and I'll see you next time. Get it?